Mahantesh Sabarad is now joining us. Mahantesh, what's your first reaction to this particular deal? The stock is down 6%, but not commenting on where the price is going. Is the deal broadly in line with your expectation?
So the deal is in line with the expectation broadly because of the one expectation that we had was the post-merger. What is it that Vodafone will end up owning of Idea? We were looking at a 43% kind of ownership. It seems to be now 45. So there is a small bit of difference, though not material enough. So from that perspective, yes, it does appear to have met our expectation, and this was, as you know, was being talked about by the market for quite some time.
Right. So, as far as this deal is concerned, as you pointed out that, it's been expected, people have had positions. So the first day reaction can always be a false reaction as well?
Maybe yes, because, the way I look at the market today is that the Idea is down substantially, but Aditya Birla Nuvo, AB Nuvo is sort of flattish, hasn't moved. AB Nuvo currently owns about 23% or thereabouts 24% of Idea. So that tells me that if the holding company is not reacting, but Idea alone is reacting, there seems to be something wrong in terms of the positions held by players, and therefore it's reacting for the day.
See, that's quite a possibility. But, if I just look at Idea and Vodafone merger, whatever the valuation, it's a big change for the industry?
Yes, it's a big change because it's a large merger. Let's look at it this way. Such a large merger, if you combine the entities, then the current EV as they have put out the numbers is about 1,60,000 crores, which by itself is a very large number. So irrespective of whichever sector that we are talking about, this is a large merger. And coming on the back of Reliance Jio's foray into the telecom space and its commercial launch in a way, so to speak, starting April, this is a big consolidation in the telecom sector. So the sector as a whole is going to see a lot of consolidation. Even as I look at this merger, we will see some smaller players also consolidating over a period of time. Mind you, there is also this whole news of a BSNL MTNL kind of merger as well. So the industry is going through this phase of consolidation, and eventually I believe that the industry will emerge stronger.
Right. And any sort of pricing power shown by this industry, markets will just forget the merger valuations and move ahead?
Yeah, I think what you're trying to ask me is that since the prices have crashed, ARPUs, when I say prices, I'm essentially referring to ARPUs. When the ARPUs have fallen so much, the market is right now trying to pause and think, are the ARPUs going to crash furthermore, or are they going to rise? So that's a very difficult question to answer. Right now, the only indication that we have is that Reliance Jio has been launched. Starting April, we will get a better sense of what the pricing is eventually going to be, and whether there will be an upward movement or a downward movement. But theoretically, any consolidation of the industry typically means that the pricing power goes up, and therefore we should see ARPUs rising.
Right. Also, just a word on the technical nature of this particular sector. It's still a very under-owned sector. Still, expectation from the sector is not large?
Yes, in a way it is under-owned as a sector, and therefore the expectation is not too large, and therefore any positive development, the way that I referred to in terms of an ARPU change for the positive, can drive the valuation substantially up. Look at the Idea Vodafone merger at about 6.3 EV EBITDA, which is historical EV EBITDA kind of multiples. This appears to be very cheap when you look at from a forward perspective, wherein we say and discount the fact that ARPUs will rise, then the valuation is cheaper. Conversely, if the market is believing that no, ARPUs are not likely to rise soon, and then therefore the merger has happened at a higher multiple. Very difficult to say, but going by the side of theory, I think we should be seeing better days ahead for the industry.
Right. And maybe after this correction or this adjustment that the market does to the deal for Idea, maybe even Bharti Airtel, then probably you think at least this volatile move would go behind?
Yeah, I think the volatile movement will be behind, and now the market will start increasingly focus on 2 or 3 things, one of which is what I mentioned in terms of the ARPU movement. The second is the synergy benefits that both Vodafone and Idea will drive through this merger, and how quickly this merger will essentially happen. So at the end of the day, if all these 3 things come out together positive, then there could be a re-rating upwards for the stocks.
Right. Let's talk about the markets as well. Where do you think markets are headed? Do you think that the worst is factored in as far as, the best is priced in as far as markets are concerned?
No, I think what has happened is that the market has seen off very heavy heavy triggers. One of which was the Fed rate hike. Before that, there was also this whole state elections that the market was focusing upon, and we also have now the GST upcoming. So these heavyweight events are behind, and therefore the market will be going through a consolidation kind of phase. The focus will be narrowing on earnings alone now, and the triggers thereof. So we see that the markets will sort of remain steady for the timing before they resume an upward movement. So I wouldn't necessarily say all the positives are factored in. In fact, one of the positive yet to be factored in is the upcoming rising earnings trajectory.
Right. And what do you think FY18 will be in terms of earnings?
So it's a very difficult call on a low base. There seems to be a consensus developing upon the fact that earnings will grow somewhere in the range of 18% to 20%. It could be even better than that if we see the monsoons going off well as the year progresses. So for the time being, it seems to be around that number, and any surprise on the positive will mean the market should move higher.
Right. And do you think that earnings can grow because the 3-4 years base is not that low, and you're seeing some revival in large cap sectors?
The base has been low actually, and therefore when we look at from a low base, the growth rate appears very high, and now we are seeing a confluence of a lot of events. There is essentially a macroeconomic stability now coming into the markets. So we've had right now we have resumption in exports growth, we have stable currencies, we have low CAD, we have low fiscal deficit, we have low inflation, and interest rates are if not poised to fall, are steadier now. So all these point to the fact that macroeconomic stability is there in the markets, and therefore earnings will start resuming an upward trajectory soon as investments flow in. And therefore we maintain that while the market will consolidate in this intervening period, it has a positive bias.
Right. What do you do with the banking space? Because I mean the private banking space, because that's a space which has been growing. Do you think that's the area to focus on?
See, banks have always been our favorite sector in the markets, partly because it's also the most in terms of its weightage, it's the heaviest sector in any of the indices that you really take, the broad-based indices of the market. So by that logic alone, the banks remain a favorite sector. Number two, there is a lot of development or activity happening, be it the PSU or the private banking space, in terms of growth ahead, which is you will see a resumption in credit growth, an overall credit growth resumption. There is right now credit growth happening in such spaces as consumer finance, for example, but not really on industrial finance. So we will see a broad-based credit recovery happening. We will see most of the banks have a better ability. The markets at 9,000 plus, the ability of most banks to raise capital is better, and we will hopefully see NPA resolution soon.
Right. And even in terms of PSU banks, do you think markets will not focus on growth right now? It will focus on NPA resolution?
No, I think NPA resolution is indeed a main focus area. But having said that, what most of the players would also look for on the PSU bank's perspective is how strong is their capital. Is the capital structure of the bank tuned for an upcoming credit growth? If it is so, then I see no reason for those set of banks being re-rated higher.
Right. And in terms of private corporate banks, I'm talking about names like ICICI, Axis. Do you see their valuation expanding?
I think the favorite for us right now remains IndusInd Bank because of the various things that it is doing. It's obviously growing at a very fast clip. It's got its consumer finance focus quite right. And hopefully it will have this MFI focus coming in, industrial credit flowing in, and etc. I think that's the best bank to own right now.
Right. And in terms of other top picks, what will be your top calls?
So from a sectoral perspective, I've already talked of the banking space. From a sectoral perspective, we also like at this juncture the IT space. It's thanks to all these concerns surrounding the H-1B visa program of the Trump administration, most of the IT companies have seen their valuations dwindle down. So purely from a valuation perspective, most of the IT companies are appearing very attractive.
Which ones?
Starting with Infy itself.
Right. And other top calls?
So there is an Infy, then we will look at an HCL Tech and the likes. So IT sector is the next big pick for us, and we also like the consumer discretionary kind of space, which will include such sectors as the auto, such sectors as consumer durables, and even some portion of FMCG will be there.
Right. Can you just be specific in that as well?
So in the automobile space, we would prefer typically very large cap kind of names. So we will have the likes of a Tata Motor, for example, as one of the picks there. From the consumer durable space, we like the air conditioning kind of space. So, the makers of ACs, for example. So you have the likes of a Blue Star, Voltas, Hitachi Home.
All three?
In a way, yes, all three. Then you have on the FMCG discretionary kind of space some of the names which are into the spirits. For example, Radico Khaitan is something that we would pick.
Right. So Radico Khaitan on the spirits side as well. These are among your calls. But what do you think about the mid-cap space? You think ideas now would be very selective because the mid-cap index itself has done very well?
No, on the contrary, mid-caps always is a thriving space for stock pickers, and irrespective of how the indices move, you will always come across situations or sectors or subsectors and set of stocks which will continue to do well. The mid-cap space as a whole is very large. You have to always be very selective. Unlike the Nifty, where the general call is that if you want to own the Nifty, it's better to own almost the entire 50 stocks in different weightages. But when it comes to mid-cap space, you don't end up owning all the stocks. You end up only owning a selective few. And therefore, irrespective of what the index level is, stock pickers will always will have that space seen as thriving for picks.
Do you think that in terms of mid caps, the flow that you're seeing from the domestic investors will continue to keep the valuations higher?
I think yes. The surprise part of the entire last year and a half has been how the mutual fund industry has been pumping money month after month, and that's thanks to the SIP strategies that most of the funds have, and also thanks to alternatives not really being available. When you have interest rates falling, the alternatives in the form of fixed deposits or bonds or similar such instruments become narrower and narrower, and therefore a lot of money which I would say is sitting on the fence gets driven into mutual funds, equity mutual funds, and therefore we are seeing a lot of fund-based buying activity in the market. I think that this will continue to be there, and I don't see a situation where mutual fund industry will see any outflows.
Right. As far as the mutual fund industry is concerned, or the retail participation is concerned, are you getting a sense that retailers are coming back into the market not only via mutual funds but even directly?
In a way, yes. The moment the index climbs up to such levels as 9,000 from the Nifty perspective, retail investors are indeed attracted. They also come to the market via the indirect route, which is through the mutual fund. So yes, you will have a situation where retail participation will continue to grow.
Right. Mahantesh, thank you so much for taking out time for us. Always good to get a perspective.